June 3rd, 1972. I set out before dawn, the map a thin scrap of paper crumpled in my pocket. The forest beyond the ridge has always been a rumor among the townsfolk, talk of a place where the trees whisper back. I told myself the silence would be a balm for my restless mind, that the solitude would finally quiet the frantic thrum of thoughts that had chased me since the accident. The road curled away from the low-lying houses, and the world grew dim, the sky a bruised violet that threatened to bleed into night. When I reached the ridge, the trees rose like black spires, their bark slick with a thin film of dew that caught the pale light. A cold wind slipped through the branches, carrying a faint scent of rot and something sweeter, like old incense. I slipped the map into my coat and stepped into the underbrush, the crunch of dried leaves the only sound beneath my boots. At first the forest seemed ordinary, a canopy of pine and oak, shafts of early sunlight piercing the gloom. But as I moved deeper, the air grew heavier, as if the woods were inhaling. The silence was not empty, it pressed against my ears, a pressure that made my thoughts feel like they were being pulled outward. I paused, listening. From somewhere beyond the trunks, a low murmur rose, a susurrus that seemed to echo my own breathing. I told myself it was the wind, but the sound was too rhythmic, too intentional. It shifted, forming words I could not understand, then rearranged themselves into a cadence that matched the beat of my heart. My pulse quickened, and a prickling sensation crept up my neck. I turned, expecting to see another hiker, but only the same twisted trunks stared back, their bark mottled with dark patches that looked like bruises. The path narrowed, and the trees grew closer, their branches intertwining like gnarled fingers. Shadows pulled at my feet, moving as if alive. I felt a tug at the back of my mind, a whisper urging me forward, promising answers to the grief that had gnawed at me since the night I lost my sister. The whisper grew louder, now unmistakably a voice that sounded like her, soft, pleading, terrified. I stumbled onto a clearing where the ground was carpeted with moss, so thick it muffled my steps. In the center stood a stone altar, ancient and covered in mossy runes that pulsed faintly with an inner light. Around it, the trees formed a perfect circle, their trunks leaning inward as if protecting something sacred, or perhaps imprisoning it. The voice surged, now a chorus of familiar tones, my mother's lullaby, the laugh of a child, the rasp of my own breath, all intertwined with a low, guttural chant that seemed to rise from the very soil. I felt my will dissolve, my thoughts no longer mine. The air grew cold enough to see my breath, and the trees began to sway, not with wind but with purpose. Suddenly, the ground beneath the altar cracked, revealing a yawning darkness that exhaled a putrid, metallic smell. From the void rose tendrils of shadow, curling around my legs, tightening, pulling. I tried to scream, but the sound was swallowed by the forest's endless whisper, a sound that now felt like a verdict. The last thing I saw before the darkness claimed me was my own face reflected in a pool of black water at the altar's edge, eyes wide, mouth frozen in a silent scream, surrounded by trees that seemed to lean closer, listening, waiting for the next soul to wander in, to join the chorus of the whispering ridge.